All right. Welcome to episode 2 of the Risk Management and Patient Safety Podcast. This podcast is presented by Medplace, and we're excited to bring you conversations with top risk and patient safety thought leaders from organizations across the country. Please subscribe to get the latest news and content from the podcast, and if you found value in any of the episodes, feel free to share it. Also, if you're interested in participating as a guest, please send us an email at marketing@medplace.com. Today I'm joined by Jerrod, once again, the CEO of Medplace. Hey Jerrod.
Hey mister, how you doing?
Good. Excited to be here and excited to cover some different topics that are top of mind. But I'll kick off with something that we've talked about last time, and I think it's a way that as an organization we've summarized it using an acronym. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we're in the business of connecting medical specialists that are super busy because they're practicing specialists with organizations that need them, right?
Right.
And they need that within very specific time constraints. They need a certain level of quality, and they have to do a bunch of really hard things in the middle, like sending information in a HIPAA compliant way, and getting on calendars with people who have very busy calendars,
Right.
Who may be doing this as a favor in a lot of cases, right? So the place that interaction is done really, really well is actually inside hospitals.
Right.
There's something that every healthcare provider has heard, and that's a curbside consult.
Right.
And at its very basic level, it's where a doctor pulls another doctor aside in the hallway and says, look, I need your help. Maybe it's a neurologist. He says, I've got this case, and I'm wondering if you can look at it really quick. And it's a really quick, informal way of getting some advice so that the doctor that's providing care for the patient can move that care forward, right?
Right.
And so that's a curbside consult, and it's done every single day.
Right.
But it's not always done the right way, right? It's not always done like the most, not legal, but the way that
Up to snuff type of way.
Yeah, there's like risk involved with that, right?
Right.
There can be, right? Unless you're checking a few boxes. So there's kind of that to think about. But it's so dang convenient. That's why it's used, right?
Right.
And I think if you really look at the culture of medicine, doctors really like helping each other.
Absolutely.
And I think in general, we as a society like that type of interaction.
Right.
So here you have this thing called a curbside consult that happens within the hospital. But what if that interaction could happen, something as convenient as that, what if it could happen at a larger scale? Right? So what if you could scale the curbside consult digitally, and if you could do that, if you could have that kind of ease of interaction, as easy as me saying, hey, Dr. Nestor, can you help me with this case that I'm looking at? What could that open up? Right. So you imagine, like, you take all of this, take the most brilliant, radiologists in the U.S. today, and what if you could create a connection with them that seamlessly for things like peer reviews, right? I need to peer review my radiologist. What if I could find another radiologist that my radiologist would respect, that he would or she would, curbside consult and in a hallway? What if I could find that digitally and create that connection and make something that easy, right?
Right.
What if you could use it for reviewing claims? What if you have like a CRP program, a communication resolution program, early resolution program, and you are wanting to assess your events, your harm events, closer to when they happen, but you need to do them faster.
Right.
But you don't want to sacrifice quality. What if you had something as convenient as a curbside consult to be able to make that happen? So that is at the crux of what we really are trying to design around. And there's software vendors and software creators in the healthcare space that get this. Most of them don't. Most people building software for healthcare are they're designing things that are complicated.
Right.
And they create overhead. And that overhead, like 20 clicks is more overhead than 2 clicks.
Absolutely.
Right? And people may say, well, it's just a click. but it's more overhead.
Mm-hmm.
And when you amplify an entire interaction like that with all of this overhead, you don't get buy-in.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's not as convenient as a curbside consult,
Yeah.
right? It's as it becomes the thing you want to do last in your day, right? So that means that even though I want to execute a peer review much faster for my physician than I am, I can't because I don't have the tool to do that.
Right.
And even when I try to do it, there's so much overhead that the physician, maybe outside of my organization, I'm asking to do it. It just, it doesn't work, right? So how do you scale a curbside consult digitally?
Right. And then you're already fighting kind of the hill of, this isn't what I'm used to. This is a lot different from what I'm used to. I'm used to just going down the hall and talking to, Dr. Ortega, Dr. Garcia, whoever it may be.
You're inventing new behavior, and that's always a hard thing to do, right? Technology should be so good that it is invisible to the user, right? And in a behavior that we're used to, like calling someone on my phone, should be more like the design patterns that we're engineering for this industry. And when you think about how much physicians are doing and how busy they are, we should absolutely be designing around them, right? So we'll talk about some of this stuff like human-centered design, but you also talk about that, that nurse who's managing risk and quality a lot of times at her clinic, and she's an army of one, and she's got to get this stuff done, and yet she's wrestling with technology and all these other things that make it hard to engage the right medical expertise in order to do the thing that you need to do in order to move on with your life, right? So, with all that said, we came up with an acronym. And the acronym that you mentioned earlier, the acronym is Curbside. So, Curbside Methodology. And we're going to walk through today the elements of that, and we're just going to kind of set it up because it's a pretty comprehensive methodology.
Yes.
And it's something that we built for ourselves. It's what we follow. When we're engineering product and workflows, we're looking at all these elements of Curbside to really tune in and hone in all of the little interactions and automations, all the other stuff that technology does to get out of the way in order to make an interaction really simple. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today.
And I think it's important to note, you touched on it a little bit, that this is a framework that pretty much anyone can replicate. This is just kind of a way that we've set it up, but this isn't just proprietary to us. It's more of a kind of a collection of best practices.
It's a way to think about how you're interacting with medical specialty, how you're getting insights from people when you need it, right? And how you're making that entire exchange good work for both sides. So yeah, we're going to unpack that. I'll do kind of an inch deep today, and then over the course of this podcast, we'll probably go into these different sections. And my goal is to give people tools that they can go use tomorrow. Like if you're running peer review at your hospital, and you want to know how to do external peer reviews faster, I want to give you tools to be able to do that right now, just a little bit better than you're probably doing it. And then over the course of this, you'll learn how we think about these types of things too.
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
Great.
Tell us about the C.
All right. So Curbside. We didn't spell it funny. There's no Y's in there or anything like that. So the C is curation, classification, and rating. Okay. So what this means is knowing who you've got, who you've got access to.
Right.
And so you may have like your employed physicians and all of their specialties and what they are good at. Ideally, you've got their CVs. Right. And if you have all this information, you can use natural language processing and machine learning and stuff to crawl through those and figure out what everybody's good at. So when you have something happen at the hospital, operationally, something occurred with a procedure, for example, you know all the resources you can go to internally. And ideally, you've got some semblance of that also for external physicians. And if you don't have that, that's a big part of how you can speed up your process of peer review and claims and other things. You might even be interested in having physicians help advise your physicians on coding. You may think that You may have a vendor that does coding advisement for you, but you may find out that, or you may realize today that your physicians really want to hear that from another doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you have all of your external resources sort of known so that you can very quickly figure out who's the right person to engage, right? So classification, curation, who's good at what does each individual do, what do they do well, or is this person good at peer review?
Mm-hmm.
Is this person good at coming alongside and providing mentorship for maybe one of your doctors who's going through a claim right? That can be really difficult
Absolutely.
stuff. So you might have some external people that you'd like to use for that, not internal because of politics, right? You may have people that you want to use for claims, right? If you look at all of the subspecialties that generate more claims, you're going to have orthopedics, and you're going to have OB, and you're going to have general surgery, right? Some of these popular ones. Who are your external doctors that have those backgrounds that you can tap on and know that they're available?
Right.
Maybe you've already got contracts signed with them and things like that.
Right.
But how you curate them and what they're good at is important. Having a rating system, right? So we used somebody externally and they gave us a review and they got a bad rating. Well, you'd better know that going into the next time you try to engage them, right? Do you even have a rating system to know how you did? If you're not running risk tomorrow and somebody else, 2 years from now is running this, do they have enough information to know that, of your database of people, who's good at what, and who should we call again, and who should we never call again? So the last part is enrichment and analysis, and this is where I think we have the most opportunity as an industry to significantly improve our patient safety, our quality systems, and everything else.
Right.
This is, at its basic level, is just, let's say you're a physician I've engaged to give me an opinion on something. Am I optimizing you for that insight, right? Am I telling you what I'm really looking for, right? Beyond the medical record, beyond other things, are you giving me all of the information that you can as it pertains to this case so I can make better decisions, right? That's my enrichment of your analysis, right? Is how I enable you to do that, and also just your inherent, experience in your field, right? Those two things together can give me great insights, can probably level me up beyond what I'm doing today.
Right.
But what if, I'm dealing with a case that there's known data on, right? This particular case in this particular procedure is known to cause, these particular issues that lead to, a higher average claim than something else, right? I might want to know that, right? And that data is out there. And there's also research on these different procedures that you as a doctor may or may not find or discover, but that data is out there.
Right.
So what if that data automatically came along with your analysis?
Right. Very helpful.
What if Medplace or whoever or some other place automatically fed that data along with your analysis to what I've got? What if I had an analysis on your bias?
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's say that you've done, 50 of these reviews in the past year or two. Well, what if I could record how many times you were in favor of standard of care or not, right? That's an interesting stat that nobody ever sees.
Right.
But if that came along with your opinion, all of a sudden I've got a calibration point for that opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, what if I looked at, what if I did blind reviews? What if I had 3 of you or 6 of you looking at the same case?
Yeah.
And I could all of a sudden account for different perspectives. Would you all agree? Would you all agree on the same things? Would you disagree? Would one of you have found something that the other 5 didn't? Right. So that's like an enrichment opportunity around analysis that nobody's really doing today. There's some that are doing it, right?
Yeah.
But when you use technology, it opens up the door to do these kinds of things. If all of a sudden a review is the easiest thing I'll do all day, well, maybe I'll get 2.
Right.
Maybe I'll do 3 of those for certain types of cases in certain situations.
Right.
So, between data coming in and enriching in the analysis you're already giving me, and me being able to expand and augment your analysis to include like a larger scope, but just as fast. Those are really, really interesting things to me as far as just creating better systems. That's just data coming in. Ultimately, how you're then using that data and implementing it is the rest of the equation, right?
Right, like I can see that being used by taking the insights you're finding by, say, this particular physician and whether he agreed with standard of care or didn't, and comparing it to, say, like an association that aggregates this data as well, and matching that up and comparing it and seeing how it stacks up there.
Exactly, right? The more information I can get to tell me when I've got an outlier, to tell me when I've got something to deal with, or maybe just injecting best practices into that. Right? Okay, you've seen this procedure, it went wrong in this way. Here's a bunch of mitigation steps. Here's a bunch of things other hospitals have done in this situation to improve their system. Could you imagine that?
Right.
If I'm getting a peer review done and it comes with all of these best practices that other hospitals have done, I mean, that's really powerful stuff, right? And there's vendors that are doing pieces of this. Some of them are doing large pieces of this, but this is where I think the opportunity is for us and for risk managers.
Yeah, it's really helping to make sense of data. I mean, that's something that's talked about more and more. And I think there's bigger conversations on it, collecting data and to use it for what?
Yeah.
What are you actually
doing? And do I have to have a degree in data science in order to do anything with it?
Right.
Or is a data scientist working with a human-centered designer,
right,
and in creating the insights that I need at my level to be able to consume and do something with it. So I think that's where a lot of this opportunity is. So you'll see us over the course of this podcast invite people in these different lanes to talk about how they're doing these things. What insights are they showing, and then we'll talk about how to incorporate that back into like a practical, risk manager and quality practice.
Right. Interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
Like Jerrod said, I think there's a lot more to cover here with the Curbside methodology, and we could probably spend an episode per letter, to be honest. But that's something that we'll unpack moving forward, and obviously with guests moving forward. But is there anything else that you wanted to touch on in the summary of Curbside?
I think that's it for now. I think let us know, as you're watching this in comments and otherwise, where you have questions or where you feel like you've implemented some of these techniques, and let us kind of feed that back to the community so that we can all sort of learn together.
Right. Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you for listening and for watching, if you're watching. And this is episode 2, and we'll be back, and subscribe and like the episode if you found it helpful. Otherwise, see you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks.